here is our afternoon session. The series of sessions I did this week were on practical uses for the bulk administration tool. Multi-argument queries using custom files instead of queries, being able to do bulk changes of not just checkboxes, but also how to do bulk changes of like description fields and whatnot. The other sessions I did this week. If you have access to our Live 365 library, you can go watch those recorded. But the one we're going to do today, one we're going to do right now, is how do I use migration tools in the bulk administration tool to migrate phones. And what we're talking about is migrating phones from one model to another model. Now I'm going to show you the two native utilities in bulk administration tool for this. I'm sure at least some of you have come here hoping, hey, great, man, I need to refresh 9,000 phones. She's going to show me how to do that. Not exactly. What I'm going to show you is how to do things in relatively small batches. And that's one way to migrate 9,000 phones. It just takes some time. If you do need to do large wholesale migrations of phones, my recommended app for you is MigrationFX by a company called UnifiedFX. They're out in Scotland. They're awesome people. Love those guys. MigrationFX is so good, in fact, that if you are part of Cisco's technology refresh program, where you turn in old phones and you get new phones for a discount and all that, part of that process, you can get a free one-year license to MigrationFX. So Cisco is highly integrated with that particular application. So if you need to do really large migrations, that's the way to go. When we're talking about migrating, there's two things I want to show you. Number one is, excuse me, onesie twosie. You know, Bob comes into your office and says, hey, dude, I spilled my double mocha latte all over my phone and it doesn't work anymore, right? And there's no more of the same phone model on the shelf. If I had another phone that was the same phone model, I could just, put the new MAC address in Bob's record and I'm done. But I don't. Now, what I don't want to have to do is delete Bob's phone and build a new phone. The fact that it's a different phone model means I can't just replace the MAC address. So I'm going to show you a really elegant way to migrate that phone from one phone model to another phone model. Now, that first method I'm going to show you is really just for onesie twosies. But there is a related method that allows you to do these in bulk, really up to 1,000 at a time. But you have to be careful because there are certain considerations, and we'll talk about that. All right, so that is where we are headed. Now, I don't think I VPN'd in. Let me get VPN'd in on my system real quick. I was intending to do that between the last session and this session. And what do you know? There was no time. All right, here we go. I want to make sure I was still recording the session. The marketing people get upset with me and I forget. All right, so here we go. So I have a bunch of phones in my system. And let's say that, and I happen to know I've got a bunch of, let's say, 8845s. Oops, not begins with, contains. Sorry about that. So here are my 8845s, and let's just take Rachel Carpenter here. Rachel Carpenter comes into my office and I need to upgrade just the one phone. Maybe she gets promoted and she's going to get the 8865 phone. So how do I migrate this phone and all of its settings? She's got some speed dials. She's got a particular phone button template, the fact that she's the owner. Maybe she's got intercoms or who knows what, but everything. The calling search spaces, the partitions, the whole shebang. How do I migrate? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go create a new phone template based on the 8865, what the model you're going to migrate to. And I'm going to call this migrate, oops, to 8865. what you're going to put in here are just required fields and nothing else. Device pool is a required field. Now, my Rachel Carpenter phone, I think, was in the Houston device pool. And I have to put a device pool in the template here. And I'm going to go ahead and pick default just because I know that's wrong. What you will find is that all of Rachel's existing settings are going to migrate over. So Rachel's existing phone, which has the Houston, I think, device pool, when I migrate using this template, it's going to get the Houston device pool. Phone button template. Now, here is where you are going to have to be a little more careful. If you have used a custom template, anything other than the default, you're going to make sure that you have a compatible phone button template. You will not lose any of the line-related information, but if the new phone has fewer slots, then some of the things that are on the existing phone are going to move into the unallocated buttons. You can just change the template and you can move stuff around, but this is something you have to be careful of. The only other things I need to worry about are device security profile and SIP profile. Now, SIP profile, like device pool, if the SIP profile on Rachel's existing phone is a different profile from this, Rachel will get her existing profile. The security profile, on the other hand, that is going to change, but that's fine because we have a new security profile. Again, if you have a custom one, though, be cautious about that. Most organizations don't use custom security profiles, but some people do. And that's it. Those are the only fields I'm going to fill out. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save. I'm not going to do anything with the lines. I'm not going to do anything with any other field. Waiting for this to save here. Come on. There we go. Okay, so I've created the template. Now I'm going to go in to Rachel's phone. Which is currently showing as an 8845. And notice she has, I guess, the New York device pool. Remember I said that was going to change, right? The template has default. Up in related links here, I will pick migrate phone and go. Which template am I going to use? Well, I'm going to migrate this over to an 8865. So migrate that. What's the new MAC address of the new phone? And let me call it AAAABBBB2222 just for kicks. And new description. Migrating to a different phone type may cause a loss of features and data. Again, just be cautious of the differences between the two models and make sure you're not going to lose anything, especially if you have fewer buttons. And voila, like magic, Rachel's phone is now an 8865 phone, and here's her New York device pool. The phone button template did change because it's a different model phone, but all of her speed dials and all that stuff is all there. And here's the beautiful part. Her 8845 is now gone. If I look for description, contains Carpenter, I will find that she has just the one phone, and it's an 8865. So if you need to migrate a single phone, this is a great way to do it. Now, while I'm on that topic, I want to talk about the migrate tool. These three fields, let's say I got a question here. You can go off mute too. If the protocol is going from skinny to SIP, that'll be fine. Like if I have a 7962 skinny phone and I'm migrating them to an 8845 SIP phone, as long as there is a SIP profile on the template, it will add that field and it will give you all default SIP fields. So at that point, if you've got, again, some custom SIP fields, you want to make sure that you have all the right things. But can I do that? Sure. Absolutely, because it's a new phone. What you're doing is effectively building a brand new phone. You're just migrating the settings from an existing phone onto the new phone. So you'll still get device pool and calling search space and line and intercoms, and all that stuff will come along. And it'll just become an 8845 SIP phone. Now, a word about that though. With intercoms, intercoms, I've just popped into my head here. Intercoms on skinny phones, you just build the intercom and you're fine. With SIP phones, you have to have a SIP dial rule that added to the phone. So you would have to do that after the fact in order to make an intercom work if you happen to have one. Does that answer your question? Hopefully so. Feel free to go off mute or put it into chat. Yes, okay, awesome. So getting back to what I was saying. These three fields here, what template, what MAC address, and what description. What I'm going to show you next is how do I use the bulk administration tool, phone migration, to do what I just did in batches. The pieces of information I'm going to need the old MAC address, or actually really device name. And that means that would have to include the SEP if you've got phones. I'm going to need the new MAC. And the new MAC must be exactly 12 characters. So, gee, could I migrate a phone to a Jabber client? I actually did it once. It was pretty messy, but one of the requirements is I had to make the name of the Jabber client a 12-character MAC address compliant thing. Like I couldn't call it CSF, so I called it CCC, right? So you had to use hexadecimal, but it worked. I did manage to do it. And then description of the new phone. Those three pieces of information are what we're going to need when we do the batch phone migration. Because it really is just doing what we just did in bulk. All right, let's take a look at phone migration. What I'm going to need to do a phone migration is a phone template, and we're going to go ahead and migrate some phones to 8865s. And the other thing I'm going to need is a file name, and that file name is going to contain the list of devices that I'm going to migrate. If you sat in the earlier sessions, we talked about custom files, using a custom file rather than a query, which in a custom file in that case was just a list of MACs. So rather than doing a query, I used a custom file to list the objects I wanted to change. Same kind of thing here. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, how do I format this kind of file name? When you come in here, I can view a sample file, and this will show me what it is supposed to look like. These three headers, I need the old device name, comma, new device MAC address, comma, description. Those three fields, comma, separated values. And then I need to fill in that data. And notice old device name is in SEP format, new MAC is MAC format, and then description. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and copy these three headers out, and I'm going to pop those into an Excel. Did it not take properly? Looks like it didn't. Oh yeah. Tell you what, let me put it into a text file. Here we go. Fine. It's being persnickety, so I'm just going to do them one at a time here. Oh, there we go. Now it put those in all in the same field, so I'm going to need to get rid of these. So my three headers are now old device name, new device MAC address, and description. And when I work with this file, I'm going to save it as a CSV file. So File, Save As. Put it on my desktop. I'm going to call this Migrate Phones to 8865. And I'm going to make it a CSV file. There we are. Not CSV. There we are. And that's on my desktop. Save. Okay. So now I just need some data. Well, if I go into my phones, I'm going to go grab some MAC addresses of phones. And I'm going to put them into the spreadsheet and do the data. Now, just a note about this. Depending on how you work with your phone buttons, right? Some people go into the individual phone and go and use the modify phone buttons, and you get an individual phone template on a per phone basis. Or if you deploy universal device templates and universal line templates, it does a custom phone button template for each phone. You're going to want to standardize those phone button templates prior to doing your migration. Again, otherwise you might have unexpected results. So let's see, I want to go get, let's say, a bunch of, I want to get my device type. Contains 8811s, let's say. All those people are getting upgrades. So I need these MAC addresses. It's probably not the most elegant way to do this, but this is what I did. Oops, missed one. Now, the other pieces of information I'm going to need, of course, are I'm going to need new device names, new MAC addresses, and I'm going to need new descriptions. Yeah, that's good enough. Let's just go get those 4. Whether I do 4 or 15, it really is the same. So there's my old device names. New MAC addresses. Let's call it ABCD12341234. And then I'm just going to have it autofill. But again, you get the idea there. And description, we're going to call it new 8865 1. And that should autofill. There we go. All right, so I have my data. Old device name, new device MAC address, and description. And that is how this file that we're going to use for the phone migrations works. Save. And then if I now open this file, oops, where'd it go? Here we are. Here's migrate phones right there. If I now open this in Notepad++, I will see the correct format, right? Comma separated values. This is exactly how this is supposed to work. All right, let's upload this file. So I already created my 8865 template. What this means is as you're doing your migrations, you're going to need to do it on a per phone model basis. And if there are any specific fields, like let's say phone button template, you've got 2 different groups of people. One group has 3 line appearances, 2 speed dials, and an intercom. The other folks have 1 line appearance and 6 speed dials, right? You're going to need 2 different phone button templates for those 2 different groups, 2 different jobs. Once you have the file format going, you should be okay. And you can use the techniques we saw earlier with regards to exporting data about phones in order to go grab your set of MAC addresses that you need to work with. So bulk administration, upload, download files. I need to upload this file into phone migration, add new, browse, desktop, migrate phones to 8865. And that is going to be phones, migrate phones, phone migration. There we are. Okay, save. If I now go into phone migration, I will see that I can select this file now. and I can view the file and see the data. So let's make a note of one of the phones that we are going to be changing. Come on, there we are. So SEP 33334444. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I can find one of those. Oops. And I'm going to go change my 8865 here. Do I want to run it now or run it later? I'm going to run it immediately. As with any large, in particular, batch job, be cautious about running batch jobs in the middle of the production day. Migrations actually take a good bit of juice, as do builds in Call Manager. So you want to make sure that you're not overloading your system during your production hours. All right, that was completed. Let's make sure it was good. Number of records processed, number of records failed. This is always a good thing. And let's take a look. Phone. So, right, notice we have fewer of our 8811s, and in particular, the 000033334444 is gone. Why? Because that is now an 8865 phone. And there's our new ones. Ta-da. Here's the one we did earlier. So if you would, and notice it put the device name in with lowercase text for the MAC addresses. If you want to make that uppercase because it's tidy, that's fine. Whatever works. So that is migrating a single phone and using a related technique to migrate a bunch of phones. This is independent of doing the migrate phones from skinny to SIP thing that Cisco's got. That is just if you're, if you've got existing skinny phones like 7965s or something and you want to migrate those to SIP. That's what that feature's for. That's not what we did today. And that is this session. The onesie, twosie, and group phone migrations can help you in your day-to-day, hopefully, bat lives. If you need to do wholesale bulk administration tool migrations, again, my personal favorite is MigrationFX. Let me go bring that up just for kicks. Really, the UnifiedFX guys have some great utilities. One of their other utilities is called Phone View, where you can do remote control of a phone. And when I say remote control, I mean in my GUI on my PC, I click a 4 on the keypad and it presses a 4 on that user's phone 3 states away. It's actually pretty slick. But this is their MigrationFX product. And as I mentioned, you can get it free if you are doing the technology refresh with Cisco. And it even has examples on how to get the license from them. But they do, what do you know, have a lab edition. If you want to give it a try before you purchase it or get it through TPM, there you go. All right, that is all I have for today. I hope this has been helpful. And I will stick around for a while if anybody has any questions or anything else they would like to talk about. And truthfully, you guys have my time for another half hour. So if there's something unrelated to migrating phones, I am happy to answer questions about that as well. Go off mute if you have a microphone. Otherwise, put a question in chat. I must say this is really awesome. Oh, is there any limitation on the number of phones it can process? The phone migration that I showed you, the second one, right, is still part of the BAT process. It limits it to 1,000 at a time. That's just the way those files work. But 1,000's a lot. I personally would be uncomfortable migrating more than 1,000 phones at a shot anyway. So there you go. I'm glad you enjoyed the class or enjoyed the session. I'll leave the chat window open in case anybody else pops up. Cool. Hopefully I'll see you for more sessions. We have data center ones coming up next week, and hopefully you get our schedule. Hopefully they're as helpful as this one. And have a good day. Sorry, Bob, I was typing on my other computer. I did miss one thing. The migration CSV had 3 fields, but what part of the procedure changed the phone model to the 8865? The phone button template, or the phone template itself. Let me go back in and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Remember that when we did the phone migration, there were 2 fields we selected, one of which was the file that had the, the old device names, new MAC addresses. The other thing was, which phone template are we using to for the new phone model? This new MAC address that I'm putting in that second column relates to what kind of phone. So this is one of the reasons you would need to do this in batches, because I could migrate from 3 or 4 different phone models to 8865 as a single batch. But if I've got, I'm migrating some people to 8845s and some people to 8865s, that obviously would be two different sessions, because I'd have 2 different phone templates for that. But that's where we set it. Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad you found a microphone.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Yeah. No, the names were similar enough. I thought they were the same. So.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Yes, and see, I did that for clarity. So, ha ha ha. Jokes on me.
That's what you get. Yeah.
Anything else I can do for you?
No, that was it. That's good. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome.
I have one more. I have a question. So.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, what changes in the template, the template which you have used, migrate phone to 8865, when you have user IDs associated with phone? I mean, where do you update the end user? I mean, what extra step is added?
It migrates. It migrates. Let me show you, for instance, I pulled up those 8865s and we just did the migrate. Let's see if that's going to come up in the same list. Right. So here's the one. It still has the original owner. And not only did it migrate the owner here, but like this is Susan Klein. If I go into the end user account, the device association in the end user account now reflects the new device.
Okay. And in case if we have a Jabber kind of thing or presence where we want to add a home group also, something like that?
Home group. Which field are you talking about? Are you talking about
Jabber,
home cluster checkbox?
Yeah, say if we want to move a hard phone to a Jabber.
Gotcha. Okay, like I said, I did that once, and it was, as I recall, it was ugly because there are a lot of fields on a Jabber client that are very different than a phone. But even with that, the key there is going to be that the new MAC address, right, has to be a 12 characters exactly hexadecimal. So when you name your new, let me go pull up that file here. When you name your new MAC address, right? This is going to be the name of the CSF device. And normally, like I would make the name like something like CSF S Klein or something like that, right? You can't do that. It has to be 12 characters exactly, and it wants to be hexadecimal. So you'd have to name it something funky and then go back. But again, the old phone would get disassociated. The user that was on the old phone would now be the owner of the Jabber client. The Jabber client would now be associated with the user account in the end user account. You'd have to go back and like check the home cluster checkbox, but that you'd have to do that as a separate step. You can't do that with this, but you could migrate, and you're talking like bringing all the phone lines over and all that, right?
Yeah, my question is, if we are moving, if we have like 79, 42 or 41 old phones, and we are moving everyone to Jabber.
Sure.
So, and we want to use the same phone migration process. So in this case, we will have an additional step where we'll be like enabling something on the end user profile. So what extra steps do we need to add in this whole thing?
Gotcha. So with Jabber, let's see, and I'm thinking out loud. You probably have already done a bunch of these things. I'm just thinking out loud so I don't miss anything, right? Okay. So you have to have the Cisco UDS records. You have to have the service profile and the UC services and the Jabber config XML already defined, right? You know what I'm talking about? Yes, no? No. Okay.
I mean, we have some of the users on Jabber, but in case if we want to do migrate many, I mean, in bulk, what changes? I mean, I got the phone part, that these are the parameters I need to change on the phone part.
Right.
But how do I update the end users also in bulk, like adding the home cluster parameter?
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, so surprisingly easy. Bulk administration tool, users, update users. Now, if I do a query, that allows me to, and what you, for instance, let's see. Notice that I can't select based on device name, right? You can't do that. So what I'd have to do is I'd have to go figure out which users I want to go and check the home cluster checkbox on. And I'd have to create a custom file. That was that other feature there. So bulk administration tool, users, update users, custom file. Now, what a custom file is the list of user IDs. And what it does is it replaces the query. It gives you the ability to have a custom list of objects you are going to change, whether that's going to be phones or directory numbers or user device profiles or users, right? And again, like before, sample file, this shows you the format that they want, and it's mostly just a list of the user IDs. What? Yes, you can. I just got to redo that. Sorry. Sometimes it decides to be unhappy. Come on.
Probably if you use a different browser, it is
I
more
know.
stable.
I don't want to mess up my Firefox with this. There we go.
Yeah.
So this is where what the sample files look like. Now, you don't have to have all of these fields. You can create this by exporting your existing users and then importing, but really the key is going to be the user ID. So have I done this? Oh, I did that earlier. So you would upload the file name, and then you're going to create a user template, just like you did with the phones, right? User template, and the user template would include things like, as soon as this refreshes, is the home cluster checkbox checked? Do I have one? I'm not sure if I have one or not. Yeah, there's generic user. So home cluster checkbox. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is use the export feature of import-export, right? Export all of your users, all of them. And then go through and customize who needs to have the home cluster checkbox checked and who needs it to not be checked. And it's just going to be a true-false. Next to that is another checkbox for whether or not they're supposed to have the I am in presence, right? And then right next to that is going to be which UC service profile are they going to use. So you can fill those fields in that spreadsheet, which is all data about all users, period. You can go through and one by one make sure you have it correct and then re-import and overwrite. And because the only fields you're changing is just those 3 columns, whether or not they're having a home cluster checkbox checked is another way to handle it if you have a lot. You know, if you've got a couple 300 or whatever and you can do it with this, that's great. If you have 7,000 to do, you may want to do it the other way. So there's 2 different methods for that. And so yeah, what we need to do is have the CSF device. The CSF device, so you have to have the CSF device. The CSF device must have a DN on it. SIP devices will not register if there's not a directory number. It has to have an owner, right? And then on the end user account, they must be controlled devices. Right? They have to control that CSF device, however that's going to happen. They would need to have the home cluster checkbox checked. Home, let's make a better H there. Cluster checkbox, and any other checkboxes that you might need down there. And they also have to be in access control groups. They need to be in the end users group, that CCM standard end users group. And if you're going to be using any CTI apps, that's anything. So we're talking about if they're going to control a desk phone, if they're going to use Finesse, anything. If this Jabber client's going to be interfacing with Contact Center Express, they also need to be in the CTI group. And that's the biggies. Other than that, it's just getting Jabber itself to work. You know, having a service profile, having this UDS records and such.
Okay. One more question.
Mm-hmm.
So on the bulk admin where you can, if you go to user and then click on update users,
Mm-hmm.
and if I go for a custom file, there's one parameter says value for fields to be ignored. So yeah, update
I'm sorry.
users.
Can you ask the last person? Update users. Oops.
Custom users.
File.
Custom file.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. If you click on that.
Mm-hmm. Ugh, come on. All right.
So what is the meaning of value for fields to be ignored?
Right. So I'm trying to remember how that worked. That is no longer used. The upshot of that one is that's no longer used, but that's for things like if they have a plus, if their primary extension includes a plus, the way the bulk
Mm-hmm.
administration tool used to work, if it was /+ it was fine, but if it was regular plus it was not fine. And so you would put that in there. Value for fields to be ignored. If you see a plus, that's not an operation. It is just part of the number, so you can ignore that. But we don't use it anymore. If you read the more recent documentation, this field is legacy. There's a couple of things like that in bulk administration tool where it's still in the menus, but it's not useful anymore.
Okay, so yeah, I think the rest of the things are clear. I mean, I have to first update the end users, get it configured, and then perform the phone change. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or the other way around.
Thank you.
They won't be able to log in until they have home cluster checkbox checked, but you can do the other way around too. But yeah, so good. I hope that works. Good luck. Make sure you test it in small batches first, like create a couple of dummy ones and work with that before you try and do it wholesale.
Yeah,
right?
so we actually have a couple of locations which are closing and the users are going to be virtual users.
Uh-huh.
So they will be getting rid of their hard phones and everyone will go to Jabber. So
right.
yeah, that is why I was looking for this.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Have a good day.